in
I
Australia.
I have started my recording, just so you're
I
aware.
became a Oh yes, sure, sure.
Yep.
I became a Buddhist when I was 18, so before you were born, Sonny. 1977, as a matter of
Okay,
fact.
yeah, that is way before I was born. Yes. I was
Hmm.
like, try me, and
Yes.
then
So, um, what's that?
I said I was like, try me, and then you hit me with 1977. I was like, oh yeah, no, that's way before.
Way before. Yeah. So, yes, I can. I guess I had a strong instinct to do this technique. The first time I heard it was on video. I became a I did an introductory Buddhist course in July 77, and this is in Queensland where I grew up, the northeastern state, Australia. And a few months later, I had a friend who did a master's degree, and I don't know what the whole scope of the master's was, but part of his uh, the product that he produced in his course was a video about Tibetan Buddhism, and it included, our founding teachers of the organization that I'm part of, the FBMT. Pardon me. Anyway, it's a Tibetan Buddhist organization, and kind of looking up to the Dalai Lama as spiritual teacher. And anyway, in this video, there was the recording of Gyuto monks as part of the soundtrack. So I guess most people, when they hear the sound of Tibetan, that special Tibetan chanting, I mean, Tibetans do ordinary voice singing too, but there is this tradition in the Gelug tradition. I could go into the different, it depends on how much you want to know about the culture and history of Tibetan Buddhism, but there are various branches of Tibetan Buddhism, and in the most recent branch, the Gelugpa tradition, or Gelug tradition, this tantric technique of throat singing is performed. Actually, there's another form as well. The one that you're thinking of, I mean, that you've heard me do on that video, that's specifically the tradition of Gyuto Tantric College, and there's also Gyume Tantric College, and they do an even more guttural kind of vocal production, which I find a bit ghastly, and I don't want to do. And so Gyuto means Upper Tantric College, and it's really just about their position in Lhasa, the capital. Back in the day when they were actually in Tibet, they've been refounded in India now. So Gyuto means Upper Tantric College, Gyume means Lower Tantric College, and the two different techniques have got descriptions of the sound. The Gyuto, the form that I do, is called, I mean, it has a specific name, but it's also described as ocean rolling voice, like the waves of the ocean. The other one is called the mountain cracking voice, which is, like, as I said, even more guttural. The Gume form. So yeah, it's said that it was kind of inspired by an angelic vision. What I'm going to nicknaming in Tibetan Buddhism, there are these beings who are realized beings with a certain level of attainment, spiritual attainment, and they're called dakas and dakinis. So apparently a dakini manifested and taught this method of this sound to a lama who founded one of the major monasteries of the Gelug tradition, and that's how it started. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but anyway, that's the founding myth, so to speak. So yeah, so I think of it as Gyuto technique. It's also practiced in His Holiness the Dalai Lama's specific monastery, Namgyal. The short name of the monastery is Namgyal Monastery, and that's in there's a little village called McLeod Ganj in the state of Himachal Pradesh, in sort of northwest India, sort of north of north of Delhi, the capital. And there's a large Tibetan refugee community there. And Namgyal Monastery, they do this technique too. And so what you find is, there's Tibetan Buddhism. Buddhism is a huge topic. Tibetan Buddhism is a huge topic. Even Gelugpa Buddhism is a huge topic. But just to give a broad sense, the major monastic institutions of the Gelug tradition are three: Sera, Ganden, and Drepung. And the monks there study for decades to become like professorial level of expertise on Buddhism. And when they complete their Geshe degree, Geshe means virtuous friend, when they complete that degree, then they go on to the tantric colleges. So in the tantric colleges, virtually all of the singing, all of the chanting is done with these techniques. That's kind of their thing. So there are monks in the tantric colleges who are there they're basically trained in the performance of tantric rituals. Sand mandalas. I don't know if you've ever seen such a thing. The
No, I have
creation of
not.
sand mandalas. You should be taking notes, man. You can look it up later, but they're incredibly colorful 2D images, geometric, and they represent like a plan view of a celestial temple of a deity that is practiced within their tantric tradition. So they're assembled in order to have an invocation of the deity. And after that invocation, then the sand is swept away and then placed in a nearby river or the sea to bless the environment in that area. So anyway, Dharma making, which is like ritual cake, sun mandalas, tantric dance, tantric pujas. There's all these things that some monks join Gyuto Tantric College and Gyume Tantric College as little kids, and they become what's called Lama Gyupas, which means tantric lamas, and they become expert in all of the performance of ritual related to tantric practice. And they're not necessarily highly knowledgeable. They do other study. Now, the more intellectual path of a monk is to go to Seraganden or Drepung, get this professorial level of knowledge, and then, as an adult, as quite a mature adult, transferred to the tantric colleges to study there for a couple of years to sort of cap their education. So anyway, this lineage of chanting that I'm going to introduce to you is really the home of this lineage is Gyuto Tantric College. And you can visit it these days. It's not very far from McLeod Ganj in Dharamsala. It's down the hill. There's the valley, Sidbari is in the valley, and Gyuto is there. Then you go up a bit to Dharamsala. Then you go up further to McLeod Ganj, and His Holiness is based there. And so in Tibetan language, Umze means chant master, leader of the prayers. And there's no musical accompaniment that holds the melody line of any pujas. It's the Umze's responsibility to lead the prayers, to know the words and know the tune, and to strongly know the tune, and to introduce the tune, with a loud voice. I mean, these days they have mics, but in the old days it was like the loudest good voice. And so what happens is, in Seraganden and Drepung, this technique is learned by the Umzes of the sutra colleges. These are sutra colleges. And they learn, they do this technique and they learn these kind of introductory passages to different sections of prayers, which they do in this technique. And after they've done a few words and a few bars, so to speak, in this voice, they switch to ordinary voice and the other monks join in. So even in the sutra monasteries, the Umzes learn this technique. And then in Gyuto, all of the monks attempt to learn this technique, and the Umzes are those with a highly refined and highly developed standard, because like I'm now at an Umze level. I've been doing it like part-time, very part-time, for like 40 plus years. And now my standard is like Umze level. But it's, yeah. So do you want to ask any questions at this point?
One thing that I was curious about is what was your draw towards Buddhism?
Well, speaking as a Buddhist, I could say karmic connection.
Okay.
That's my rationale as a Buddhist. It's rather hard to explain otherwise. I mean,
Okay.
I decided, like, Queensland in the 70s was maybe like Arkansas, Tennessee. We're talking not cosmopolitan, right?
Okay.
I grew up on a farm in rural Queensland in the 70s. Not cosmopolitan at all. So I basically was on this spiritual search. Once I tossed Christianity aside, I wasn't like, oh, well, I've dumped that, I'm good. I was like, I really need to know what the hell, what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? Why are we suffering? What is going on? So I was on this like spiritual search for a couple of years. And I had a really good friend at high school called Nerida Young. And she was like a sounding board. I used to have these kind of, thinking out loud sessions with her. And I came up with some ideas which, with the benefit of hindsight, you could call proto-Buddhist ideas. And at the end of that process, I decided that someone must know more than me. So I went to the Dolby High School Library.
Okay.
Not a great seat of learning. We're talking about this country high school, right? So anyway, I got this book on the world's great religions, and I was looking through. By that stage, I was dead against theism, like the idea that there was a creator. I just did not think it was rational. I didn't think it was decent. I didn't think it was even ethical, at least, I mean, with the Christian presentation, at least. So I was looking through this book. Okay, Christianity, been there, done that. Is, Judaism, theism, Islam, theism. And then there was a thing on Hinduism. And it's like, oh, this is a lot more complex and interesting. Yeah, but it's still theism. And then I got to the page on Buddhism and the Four Noble Truths. And it might as well have been written in neon because I thought, this is what I've been looking for. And I went home that afternoon and told my mother I was a Buddhist. So I was 14 years old in rural Queensland and had never met a Buddhist in my life. And I declared myself a Buddhist. So you can see, according to my view of past lives and karma and so forth, the explanation for that is that I was a Buddhist in my past life, because it certainly wasn't being influenced by others, except the mere fact of passively finding this book, which was just waiting to be found, so.
Interesting.
And it took me another 4 years to find a Buddhist center, but there was one. Well, at that time when I found that book, there wasn't one. In those few years between my age of 14 and 18, there was a Tibetan Buddhist center established in southeast Queensland, and it was only like, 3.5 hours drive away, which on the map of Queensland is like, on the map of Australia is so close. I was very close. So I went there when I was 18 and I did my first course. And when it came to the connection with this sound, like a lot of people, I mean, some people don't like the sound, but most people, I think majority of people think, wow, that's an amazing sound. Well, for me, the reaction was, wow, that's an amazing sound. I'm going to do that. Like without a second, like it was just, I didn't think, oh, but I'm a Westerner. But hey, I'm a woman. There were no thoughts separating me from the intention to go and develop that technique. And I started from that day. Like as soon as I heard it, I started. And if you want to know something funky, which fits in again to my world view of karma, past lives, and so forth, later on, I actually remembered there was one little mini micro incident when I was like, I think it was 12, and it was on a boring Sunday afternoon, and we always did the same thing. Our family always went over to my mother's place. We had a bazillion aunts, uncles, and cousins on my mother's side, so we'd have this gathering, and there was some hold up, so we were kind of dressed, ready, and just hanging out, waiting for that to happen, waiting to go. And I was in the lounge room with my brother, and I kid you not, I started making guttural sounds with my throat. I started trying to make this sound, and as you do, I tried to make my brother do it too. and And if someone had come in at that moment and said, well, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Zero concept, zero memory, but some instinct was making me do that, feel interested in doing that. And that was before I'd, ever heard the sound, any inkling of Tibetan Buddhism in my life. I actually, one time, was giving it a go, I swear. It's very strange, but that's, like I said, without any memory. It's not like, I remember my past life when I was a Tibetan. I don't remember anything, but, there was that. There was that incident.
That's wild. That's really cool.
It was cool. So, now I can get down to the how-to. I've got some ideas of physiology, but they're kind of borrowed, like I don't have a mic down my throat, and I'm not a physiologist so coincidentally, I happen to have an acquaintance who's a professor of physics. He'd be emeritus now. I haven't seen him for ages. He must be an old guy by now. Anyway, Professor Joe Wolfe at the University of New South Wales, but one of his specialties is wind instrument acoustics.
Oh, okay.
And I was like at a loose end and didn't have anything to do, and I decided to look him up and ask him if he wanted to do some analysis of my sound. And I went to his lab, and he told me some stuff that gave me an idea. So I've been instructed by what I was told about the physiology rather than an insight,
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit hard to tell what really is going on. I mean, it's all internal, right?
Yeah.
So my idea about the physiology is borrowed from or learned from Joe Wolfe.
Okay.
And so he, regarding his analysis, he told me the 3 notes that I naturally make. Like I can change pitch, but if I just open my mouth and do it in a relaxed and natural way, it comes out with 3 natural notes. And he said that the lowest note is cello C, the lowest note on a cello, which is actually lower than male's singing voice.
Right.
Like a male singing with his ordinary voice can't sing that low.
Right.
That's the lower of the 3 notes. Whereas I've compared notes on a Zoom session with a guy who can do this. He's a Western guy. There are a few out there. And he said I was an octave above him. So this is lower. My sound is lower than male singing, but there is an element of femaleness. It's very low. I never really fully get over the fact that it's weird. Like, I love it. I'm totally attracted to doing it. I love doing it. But on the other hand, I sort of have a part of my mind that goes, yeah, that's pretty weird. What can I do? Because it's so fucking low, man. So I try to avoid doing it where somebody who's a total noob and doesn't know what's going on would hear it, which is pretty restricting, I tend not to, I used to worry about the neighbors being bothered by the sound, and mostly used to do it in the car on the way to work, in terms of practice. If I did it in the apartment, I have 2 sons. They're grown up now. They're adult now, but older than you, I dare say, 37 and 31.
Yep.
And when they were kids and I would do it at home, they'd go, Mom.
That's funny.
Genius has never recognized in its own household, right?
Yep. That's
Yep.
funny.
Yeah, quite humbling, right? Mom.
Well,
So
yeah.
I think they appreciate it more now that they're adults, but as kids, they felt it pretty weird. So shall I get on to the how-to?
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Okay. So, I have this thing where I have quite a tendency to have mucus on my vocal cords, and I'm always clearing my throat, right? So when we cough, there's kind of a bit of a kick up, and you're doing a gross vibration of your windpipe, right?
Mm.
But it only lasts a second, right? And it's over. It's over. With this technique, you're doing a sort of a modified cough in order to initiate a gross vibration of the windpipe
But the key is to maintain that vibration and to stabilize it.
Okay.
So, so then it's a kind of a push down instead of a sort of an expelling kind of an upper kick. You actually sort of lower your tongue and kind of push down, and the locus of the the locus of the cough is low in the throat. So I think of that as being like halfway between the top of the throat and the bronchia, sort of the midpoint, approx.
Okay.
You're trying to actually shake your windpipe and keep it shaking, and then the muscles of your throat are surrounding that and stabilizing the way it shakes. Otherwise, if you don't stabilize, it's just a mess. It's just a messy sound.
Okay.
You know? So the thing is, I can't recreate all of the crappy beginner sounds that I used to make. I just can't do them anymore. Believe me, there are many crappy beginner sounds.
Yeah, you can leave me to those ones. I can pull off those.
You can definitely achieve those, yeah. So that was a throat clearing cough. But here's sort of what you do.
Okay.
Try that.
Something like that.
But push down.
Like that. Yeah,
Go
let me.
again. Maybe.
So it's kind of like you said. It was kind of like a cough, right? So it's like that type of feeling.
Well, I'm only using the word cough. Don't be too distracted by cough. The point
Okay.
is that your throat has your trachea, whichever way you say it. Your windpipe has to shake. And so this is now I'm going to bring in a bit of what Joe Wolf said. The false vocal folds, the sort of flaps of flesh that sit above.
Yep.
I believe that shaking them is what produces the sound. This
Okay.
is what Joe Wolf told me. And the thing is that mentally, there's no mind-body connection between those flaps. You can think all
Yep.
day and night, but you can't do anything, right?
Yep.
But what you can do is cough. And when you cough, you shake your windpipe, you're creating a gross vibration of the windpipe, and they flap. And they become like reeds that flap in the wind, and that's how you get the deep sound. That's what I think is happening.
Okay.
So basically, I mean, to give my bona fides as someone with a genuine female voice, la 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 la. I sound like a woman, right? That's my singing voice. I mean, you hear my speaking voice. But this technique, so I'll go from the pseudo cough to actually extending out to the making the sound.
That's so cool.
Anyway, that's basically the sound. So
That's so cool.
So, yeah, do you like it?
That's really cool.
Cool. I like it too. Yeah. So all I can say is that practicing that and going from some sort of grunt and some sort of guh to actually getting an extended drone, it's not easy, man. Lozenges. It's not easy on the throat. It's really not. A warm drink with some honey in it to soothe the throat, and don't practice for too long. Your throat will get a little sore. I don't think I've done any damage to my speaking or singing voice. I don't think there's a worry of doing damage, but it is raspy. Does create a slightly raspy sore throat,
Okay.
especially at the beginning, And so here's what I want to say about the early stages. It sounds rough. So if you stay in your speaking and singing voice and just try to lower it, you're never going to get there. It's not that mechanism. That will never work. And initially it will sound rough. So that's not something, a deterrent, like, oh, I must be doing it wrong because it sounds rough. No, it will sound rough. And it will feel rough. That's what I mean about the raspiness. So these are the 3 hallmarks of the beginning stages. Sounds rough, feels rough, and you may feel like you're going to throw up.
Okay.
I say that for a joke, but
it's not
what
really
I mean
a joke.
is, when you're getting some vibration in your throat and you're not skilled about how, and you're not skilled about where, and you're shifting things and stuff, well, sometimes, to make an analogy, if you're cleaning your teeth and the toothbrush goes too far back and you get a gag reflex, you suddenly feel, oh. Well, in a more subtle way than that, sometimes when you're working in the early stages and you're getting somewhere, you can get a vibration like running across the back of your throat such that it sort of triggers a bit of a gag reflex. And I have never thrown up, ever.
Okay.
But it did, it just produces a feeling of queasiness and, you stop, the feeling passes. But I think that even though it's not a goal, but that's something that happened to me, in a transient way occasionally. And so I think it's possibly a sign of progress,
Mm-hmm.
It's not what you want, but it's sort of a sign that you're pushing through, yeah?
Okay.
So now, I want to demonstrate how much effect the round mouth, the ooh posture of the mouth has on the sound. I'm going to make the same sound from my throat and then open my mouth, and you'll hear like a 2-stroke engine. It's really like monster truck madness, the vibes, the sounds that are coming from the throat.
Okay.
They only become smooth with the rounded mouth, like
Okay.
the mouth of a saxophone. So I'll just demo that. It's a bit rough. Doesn't help that I can't hear. One of my ears is blocked.
Oh, it sucks.
Yeah, I've got this ear infection. I've been taking antibiotics for days, and I've been putting these drops in to try and clear the wax. And I'm not there yet. So I'll do that again. Yeah, so
Okay. Yeah.
that's highly influential. So what happens with it's kind of, you just persevere and persevere and persevere. You just keep trying. I really don't know anything else but perseverance with this technique. The actual, the description, okay, you do a sort of a cough in the lower throat to establish a gross vibration of the windpipe, and then you learn how to maintain and stabilize that vibration. That's the instruction. That's the instruction.
3-step process.
However, it's freaking hard, and you just got to persevere. There's really nothing else than persevere. So when on my own track of doing it, what I found was that early on I got, I don't know, does 2 notes make a chord, or is that just a harmony of 2 notes? Anyway, the first stage is you do get 2 notes from the throat. The first stage is you get 2 notes from the throat, but it's not very loud because the pliancy, the actual acceptance of the apparatus of your throat to do this, it's really reluctant to do this. And so initially, if you can do it, it doesn't come out very loud. And you use a lot of breath to produce a few seconds, So it's kind of, you're pushing against the body's reluctance to do it. And I would say that the timbre, if I could come up with a word to describe the timbre, it's kind of dry.
Okay.
And what happens is, and I don't know enough about physiology to really micro explain it, but there is this transition where you go from producing 2 notes from the throat to getting enough vibration that it echoes, or it produces an overtone in the mouth and postnasal and so forth cavity. And that third, more subtle, higher note has the timbre of your speaking voice and your singing voice. And that smooths the sound. It sort of rounds and completes the sound. It sort of softens the sound. It sweetens the sound. And that's the final thing. You produce a chord of 3 notes. And so what I discovered, there's actually certain passages. There's one particular puja. I'm talking about recordings that I've heard of Gyuto monastery monks doing tantric puja, Chakrasamvara puja, I think. And there's this unbelievably spooky, fantastic section where they're doing the full chanting, like the full 3 notes with the strong, loud notes from the throat. And then they cut the throat notes and just go with the head note. And they do this kind of wafting, eerie kind of like, it's kind of like spiritual wind. They just go with the upper note and they kind of waver it. And then they bring in the full-throated, in every sense, 3 notes technique again. It's amazing. It's amazing. So anyway, I in fine detail, I don't know how to do that. The broad technique I know how to do, but the fine detail I don't. I've never done that practice. I've only heard it. But I can show you, after many years, I finally discovered how to go from the full production of the 3 notes to sort of tamp the throat notes, just sustain the head note. And the thing is that different people's a different level of ear training. I once did this for a guy who had perfect pitch. He was a Korean guy who probably had a tiger mom, and he had studied classical music to a very advanced level. And when I did it for him, he said, wow, 3 notes. He could hear 3 like that. Most people, it's not self-evident that it's 3, and the head sound is a lot softer and quieter. But what I'm going to do is take the throat sounds out of the mix so you can hear the head sound, and then bring the throat sounds back, and then you'll hear the head sound in the mix. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Sounded a little rough. I'll try again.
Okay.
It's not very well blended. I don't know why it sounds rough today. I'll try again. Usually it sounds more blended at the end. I don't know. I'm a bit impaired myself with my hearing.
Okay.
So I'm not sure how that came across. I wasn't so happy with how it sounded, but maybe it came across okay for you. I don't know.
No, I didn't notice the initial, like the third vocal note over the top, the overtone, until you took everything back out and then brought it back in, and then I was like, oh, okay, there's the third. That's super cool. And then like I actually heard all 3.
Yeah, I didn't feel it was very well blended at the end, but I think I'm a bit messed up myself with my own hearing. That may be influencing my impression of how it sounds. But yes, it's these 2 are like monster truck madness, and this is like a softer sound, so it gets lost. But once you extract the other 2 and leave it to be heard, and then bring the other 2 in, you can hear how the role it's playing. The sort of softer sound on top, higher pitch. Yeah.
That was cool.
So, so one thing I just wanted, I'll give a little bit more context and how it fits into the culture and so forth. Okay, now first I'll talk about my own progression. And by the way, there is no teaching of this technique.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've got no pedagogical technique. I can assure you, in the Tibetan monasteries, it's like this. Some people can do it. The elder monks can do it, and they perform it. And the younger monks are near them, and they hear it. Demonstrate, emulate. That's all they do. They've got no explication. Because I got two pieces of evidence about this. In 1982, back in the day, I was a Buddhist nun. I became a Buddhist nun for about 4.5 years. This is like in the early 80s. I became ordained quite quickly, actually, in 1978. And then there was a big gathering of our organization students, international bunch of students gathered in first Bodh Gaya in India, in eastern India. Bodh Gaya is like Mecca for Buddhists. It's where the Buddha attained enlightenment. Okay. And then we went to Dharamsala, with His Holiness and so forth. And we spotted in the audience the then Gyuto Umze. That is, a friend of mine, an Australian monk, and I spotted the Gyuto Umze. This Lama, I think he's passed away now. He's no longer the Umze. This was a long time ago, and he was fairly old then. But anyway, he was amazing. His tantric voice was amazing. So we asked via another younger Gyuto monk if he would instruct us, and he kindly said yes. And we went to this A-frame hut at McLeod Gunj, where he was staying for His Holiness's teachings. And via the young translator, he performed the sound. And, I was like a meter away, sitting, watching him. He performed the sound, and he said, "Now you try." Then he did it again. He said to Roger, the other monk, he said, "Now you try." That was about it, really. It's kind of like, I will demonstrate for you, and then it's up to you to emulate that. And I got another source. There's like in a big monastery, there's an Umze team. So there's the Umze who's got the most magnificent voice. And then there's a support team because, at times he'll need to have a cough, have a sip, draw a breath. And so they have a few supporting voices in the Umze team. And then there are other members of the Umze team who are there because of their knowledge of the text, because by and large, they don't read the text, they memorize them. The main ones that they perform regularly, they memorize them. So they don't rely on text. And some people are in the Umze team, some monks are in the Umze team simply because of their memorization, like they won't forget the line. So I've got an American monk friend, Tenzin Gyatso, and he's incredible for memorization. His voice is not so fantastic, but he's in the Umze team for memorization. Okay. However, he tells me, so I've got the story according to Gyatso, and he says that the Sarah Umze or the Sarah J. Umze does a sort of a round whenever they get together and says, how's your voice going? And they demonstrate it, like they're supposed to be developing it, this one. And he says, "Oh, keep trying." I know from Gyatso there's no instruction. So you're doing better than to go to a Tibetan monastery because they just, you'd hear more examples, right. You'd be more immersed. But explication, they just don't give, Weird. So okay, so what you're doing is, the gist of it is if you have, it's kind of like you're creating a musical instrument within the body, a wind instrument in the body. Think of it that way. So the sound that's probably most similar is a didgeridoo, and it's a simple tube. And you create a vibrating column of air in a didgeridoo by doing a raspberry. So, these fleshy bits flap, and that's how the wind, the column of air vibrates. So here, you're getting your false vocal folds to flap, and that creates the vibration. Okay. As you breathe out. As far as I know, that's all there is to it. So what happens is as you progress, so I've told you about, you do a lot of huffing and puffing and raspy sore throating to get just to the point of getting 2 notes from the throat. It doesn't sound very loud. It doesn't sound very satisfying. But as you persevere, So there are a few tips in the traditional cultural storehouse of how you do this, okay? So there's one tip, and that is practice by a waterfall.
Interesting. Okay.
And that's like white noise or some sort of like blanket noise, right? And the essence of practice by a waterfall is get louder.
Okay.
And, the analogy in the Western world would be, planes going over, buses going past, trains going past, a sort of roaring sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're surrounded by a roaring sound, practice the technique and try and make yourself heard in that context. It's like make effort to get louder. And the thing is that when you get louder, the sound gets better.
Okay.
With this technique, better is louder and louder is better. It's got to do with the pliancy of the throat, its capacity to flex and flap the vocal folds. And so there is that bit of instruction. If somebody said, "Oh, do it better," you wouldn't know what to do. But do it louder is self-evident. Get louder.
Right.
Practice by a waterfall. Get louder. So that means increase your pliancy. The production of the sound gets louder. It gets better. Somewhere in striving to get louder, that's when the overtone from the head comes in. The quality of the sound improves. It's rounded. And then to pronounce words, like this whole thing is done in the Mongolian folk tradition, which is very similar. You might have heard them. They just kind of do, they do vocalization, but they just kind of do drone sounds from the throat. Very rarely in Mongolian folk do they pronounce words. Do they do lyric production, So the whole point of this technique is to do prayers, Tibetan Buddhist prayers.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's religious in the Tibetan culture. It's for a religious purpose. So when you achieve some sort of drone, like when you've got to the point where you've got some sort of drone, including the third note, you think, I'm onto something. When you try to say prayers with it, sing words with it, it all just goes to crap, because basically you've been holding everything in a rigid, stable position to be able to control. You're maintaining, but you're stabilizing, right? Mm-hmm. And that's in one static position. Once you start flexing your jaw and your tongue, you lose the control, you lose the stabilization, and the sound goes to rubbish. So the next step to actually pronounce prayers or to, words, it involves getting control with these muscles, strengthening these muscles. And that's just, it doesn't take too long, but it's definitely a new stage of development. Like producing the drone is one thing, but actually the kind of control you need at the top of your throat to be able to hold it in a stable position while you're enunciating words, that's another level of development. And you've got, for the smoothing of the sound, you've got the sort of oo position of the mouth, and it's just about impossible to do E, like to stretch your cheeks back. It's just like, you can't really E, and you can't do glottals. You can't do a K and a G, because if you did, that would be a stop. The drone would stop immediately. Okay. That's like a battle between the vibration you're trying to have and the glottal stop, the glottal. So your pronunciation is distorted by all these impositions of posture of the mouth and tongue. And here's the thing. In the context of Tibetan Buddhism, tantric practices are considered secret. Now, culturally, they've become more and more diffuse and more disseminated, but in truth, in essence, they're supposed to be secret, especially the higher tantric practices, which are very, very profound. So here's the thing. If you're a Tibetan, there's like colloquial Tibetan and literary Tibetan, and even though they have similarities, but there's there's quite a lot of difference. So even if you're a Tibetan speaker, you may not know textual Tibetan, like classic. You may not understand the vocabulary of classic Tibetan. Oh, here's my roommate. I'm actually saying, come on in, Shannon, come on. I came out here because the Wi-Fi was quite weak in my room. I didn't know. So are you going to be, sorry, we're not finished.
No, you go on.
Yeah, okay. No, what was I saying?
We were on to colloquial Tibetan versus...
Yeah. So the thing is, because there's so much distortion of the pronunciation, in many instances that would be thought of as a downside or a failure of this technique, like, well, it's a shame we can't hear what they're saying, but in fact, that's plus
kind of the point.
Side in the context of Tantra. So it means even with Tibetan people, even if you had somebody knowledgeable in literary Tibetan, the fact is that if they didn't know the text, it would be hard for them to discern what's being said. So from the side of the person performing the text, they know exactly what they're saying, but it comes out, I don't know, muffled, mangled. It comes out with altered pronunciation. So on the one hand, I'm saying it clearly. On the other hand, it doesn't come out clearly. So that's actually considered a plus. So,
interesting.
Yeah, I'll just give you an example. I'll sing a 4-line prayer. It's a very, very common prayer in our tradition. And I'll sing it, so you'll hear the words clearly enunciated, and then I'll do it in this technique, and then you'll hear kind of, okay. Melodically, it won't be exactly the same. I'm not attempting to do it melodically the same, but anyway, I'm singing the same 4 lines. Sangye chodam soke chonam la janchu podo dani kyasu chi dagi jinso gipe sonam ki dola penje sangye dubara shon. So now I'll do it in this technique. So, yeah, obscured words, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that next level of development, like I said, it's the muscle control at the top of the throat to be able to stabilize, continue the stabilization. Oh, sorry, I didn't wash it out. Sorry, I'll do. We're talking washing up here now. I feel slack housekeeping. Sheriff's being good about it. I didn't mean. So that, okay, the next level of development is pitch variation. Because pitch variation is natural in speaking and singing, right? It's, we've been doing it since we could first speak,
Right.
Up and down, whatever. With this technique, pitch variation is advanced. It's advanced technique. It involves altering the aperture of your throat with muscle control, squeezing and relaxing. And there's really not much range. The range is really limited. And that's a job of work to actually do it. Because when I got to the ability to be able to chant words, I thought, I'm going to go up. I thought, I'll go up. And I tell you what, nothing happens. You think, I'll go down. And it's just like no change. Because at first, there's no body-mind connection for how to change pitch. Mm-hmm. You have to figure out how to, and you have to develop the ability to. And it's not easy. It's actually advanced technique. It takes the figuring out of how to, and it takes the development of the muscle control and the mental connection. And when you're rising up, the harder one is coming down. The sound can easily break up and become rough coming down because you sort of lose control. I mean, now I can kind of roll up and roll down, and I'll show you the range. It's quite limited. Anyway, I'll do a little bit of rolling, drone with pitch variation.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. That's about it. I don't know if do you know how many notes that would be? It's not much.
You hit. I would try to figure it out on my keyboard, but my keyboard is not plugged in. Again, my computer's not all set up. So
doesn't matter. But anyway, I mean, it's a lot less than the vocal range,
yeah.
It's
one thing that I found super interesting was you said you were gonna roll through. I thought you were gonna do like an actual vocal roll, but then it was just,
I don't know really definition of a vocal roll. What's that?
So a vocal roll is when you or a slide. It's a slide. Sorry. So
okay.
like a whoo, where there's no connecting notes. Whereas so if I was gonna do a 1-5-1 slide, it'd be whoo. Whereas if I was gonna just sing out those notes, it would be whoo.
Oh yes, I see.
So
I see.
the slide is no note stoppage.
Yes.
The note stoppage is the scale was the note stoppage, and
gotcha,
what I noticed
gotcha.
there was no note stoppage. It was you would hit one note and then jump up to this one and then jump up to this one and then jump down to this one. There was no roll there, which was really interesting and probably shows.
Yeah, so I was using the term roll incorrectly then. Yeah, I was going from note to note to note to note. Yeah.
But it probably just shows how hard
I don't even know if I could do it.
Changes. Right, yeah.
Say that again?
Oh, it probably just shows how difficult changing notes is for this technique, is because you can't just very easily just roll up or slide up.
Yeah, it's and then the most advanced technique, which you would say is Umze level, is pronouncing words while changing notes.
Okay.
And that is super advanced technique. I know in singing that's
super easy.
That's
right.
bread and butter. But in this technique, it's only Umzes do that. In Gyuto, say, for example, the vast passages of chanting are done with a kind of, it wouldn't be monotonous. It would be da, 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 da. It's not very melodic. It will be shifting ever so slightly between one note and another, because pitch variation is hard, and pitch variation while pronouncing words is super hard, because you have a setting for an aperture setting, like a dimension of your throat produced by muscle control to produce a pitch, and you pronounce a syllable. And then you reset your throat to produce a different pitch and pronounce a syllable. And then you reset your throat and do a syllable. Or reset your throat and do a syllable. It's like running up and down stairs or lifting weights. It is so muscular and so tiring. It really takes a lot of development. And so generally, the passages that are melodic, that is to say with a degree of note variation, are done by the Umzes as introductory passages into sections of prayers. And like I said, in the sutra monasteries of Seragandan and Drebung, these are the main ones, the big ones, the Umzes do this technique, and they do a sort of melodic introduction where they'll pronounce several words with the pitch flowing up and down, according to whatever tune. And then they'll switch to ordinary voice, and the monks will come in. The Umze will change to his ordinary voice, the monks will come in, and the melody will be done in ordinary voice. And then in the Tantric monastery, say Gyuto, the Umze again does an elaborate, tuneful introduction of a few words with pitch variation, and then he goes, and then the community of monks comes in and they sort of do da 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 da. You know, they don't have demands, melodic demands on their chanting. It's really too hard to do long passages with pitch variation, significant pitch variation. So then I'm in a situation where I'm just a Western woman and I don't have opportunities to do pujas. I mean, I greatly regret I don't have opportunities to do pujas with other Westerners like this. And my main teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, so I told you about going to a Tibetan Buddhist center in, 1977 in Queensland in Australia. Mm-hmm. So that was Chenrezig Institute, and that's part of the FPMT. And there were these two founding lamas. Actually, one is Tibetan and one is Sherpa, because Sherpas have the same, well, a very similar religious culture to Tibetan. They're followers of Tibetan traditions, different lineages of Tibetan Buddhism. So anyway, in the last few years, in 2014, Lama Zopa Rinpoche gave me some instruction on what I should do. And it's really idiosyncratic because it doesn't fit into any of the monastery traditions. And I think he was basically sussing out that I had this ability and I wasn't going to get opportunities to use it in the Tibetan way. And he gave me kind of an idiosyncratic, instruction to fit my idiosyncratic situation. So he told me, and this is not what's done in the Tibetan tradition, but he told me to get, we do this practice every 2 weeks. It's a little bit like Catholic Mass, but it's done on a fortnightly basis according to the lunar calendar. And the liturgy is called Lama Chöpa, means offering to the Guru. And the Guru, having a very spiritual definition, there's the person who's the Guru, but the Guru basically means the embodiment of all Buddhas and deities that are leading you to enlightenment. So that's the Guru that you're offering to. So he told me to get the tunes that I already know from the singing version of Lama Chöpa. The singing version of Lama Chöpa, which I love to sing, is written for the voice, right? The range is there for the voice, for the singing voice. So there aren't any monasteries that do those tunes in tantric voice. It doesn't happen. But I think because of my lack of, fitting into the main tradition, like sitting in the monasteries and doing, chakra samvara, puja, whatever, whatever. So he sort of gave me this as a kind of a technical challenge, an idiosyncratic method. But anyway, a technical challenge to develop Umze level ability. Okay. On my own. So he said to take the tunes of Lama Chöpa as I knew them and to try to perform them in this type of chanting. And if I got to a section where I couldn't manage to do it in this voice, then to switch to ordinary voice. And I've been working on that since I got that instruction. And he actually sang a passage and told me to follow along in tantric voice. It sounded like shit. It sounded so bad. I was just incapable of following. My voice wasn't very good it happened that my sound wasn't good that day, but even if I was optimized, at that point I had no chance, I thought I'd sort of hit maximum development because I could change pitch and I could chant, words and blah. But this was a whole other level. And so, he asked me to follow along. It sounded like complete shit. But anyway, when the sound just broke up completely. I hadn't got the control. When you lose the control, the sound just sounds rough. Okay. It goes back to sounding very rough. So now after working on it, I got better. It's still hard. What happens is I can do it for a while, but it really tires. We can all run, right? But we can't all run a marathon. Well, I certainly can't run a marathon doing that technique because it tires the throat muscles. When the muscles tire, the sound becomes rough. And so as I go on, if I go on large, many lines, many stanzas, gradually, especially when there's less wind, towards, if I lose breath towards the end of the line, the sound is rough. And as I fatigue, the sound goes rough. Mm-hmm. But I can demonstrate a passage of Lama Chopa.
Yeah.
Basically singing a tune with this technique.
That sounds cool.
Okay, I'll give it a go.
That was awesome. That's really cool.
That is so hard. I cannot tell you. That is like...
Oh, I believe it.
So hard.
You make it look so effortless, though.
For years and it's still hard. Sorry, what did you say?
You make it look so effortless, though. Like, the whole
thing.
Oh,
God.
So...
Well, don't be deceived by that. If you think it looks effortless, I'm totally focusing every moment to be able to hit the right note, which is a muscular setting of the throat, and to not let it go shabby and rough. I mean, that is a job of work, man.
Oh, yeah.
And, I can't go for very long before it becomes, the sound goes rough and, But anyway, that's a demonstration of that. So that's like Unzai level. Once you can do that, where you're hitting a different note, singing a syllable, changing pitch, singing a syllable, that is the final level of development of this technique.
Okay, cool. It's really interesting, like, how similar physiologically it is to, like, screaming in, like, Western metal music.
Yeah, I think it's very close.
It's because, so there's two styles of screaming in metal music. There's fry scream. That's the one that I have began to develop. That's my better of the two. And then there's also false chord screams, which is literally just activating those false chord screams, getting that, like, kind of a sound, but like coming from it's coming from a similar place as the Tibetan.
Yes.
As that, because it's coming from like that like low deep down type of a thing. As you get like that like it's, but I guess as I'm activating them to try to do them the both of them, because like that second one was me attempting to do the throat singing. But as I'm activating them, they're activating differently. So, like with the screams, it felt like I was trying to like smash them together like super quickly, whereas with the throat singing one, it felt like I was trying to get more of like a larger and a larger and a slower vibration than with the scream.
Yeah,
but they're in the same world. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I sort of hear a scream. Some rock people screaming, and it's not utterly different, but it is different.
Yeah,
it's physiologically different. I think, the false vocal folds are involved. Yeah, but there's some postural things with the tongue and and the mouth shape. I don't know how to do the screaming. And I also don't know how to do Tuvan technique. People have asked me about, can you do Tuvan technique? And the thing is, I've got this aversion to high-pitched notes. And Tuvan, they do some sort of thing from their head cavity producing this really high-pitched whistle, and it just bugs the hell out of me. So on the one hand, I'm awestruck by how technically brilliant it is, because it seems to incorporate everything I've got from Yudo plus, other elements. So they amaze me, but I've never tried to do it because I don't like high-pitched sounds.
Okay.
But that's another... Have you heard any Tuvan singing?
No, I've never
blow your mind.
You're blowing my mind.
You would think two people people are involved. You would think somebody's off screen because there'll be somebody doing a really deep throat thing like I do, and somebody doing a high-pitched whistle, really high-pitched whistle.
Interesting.
Like it's creepy. I mean, I find it creepy, but on the one hand, it's just astonishingly, amazingly more technical than what I do, and on the other hand, I don't like it, so I haven't aspired to try and develop it. That's where I stand on too.
That's cool, though.
But yeah.
No, you're blowing my mind that there is, because like when I was in high school and college and going through my like my music appreciation classes and stuff like that, like we were shown like Mongolian throat singing, but that was like one day, and we're like, oh yeah, this is a cool thing that people do, and then moving on. But I didn't realize that there were like so many different schools of thought on this technique. I didn't know that there were like so many different ways and layers and levels to it. So this is
I think
I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, Mongolian folk is a little bit different than Gyuto, but it's probably closest. And then Gyumei technique, which, like I said, I'm sorry I don't like it. It's really, it seems to sound like that to me. I just, don't know how they do it, and I don't want to do it. I'm just a big fan of this particular, I call it Gyuto style, but it's practiced in other monasteries, like His Holiness's monastery of Namgyal, called Namgyal Monastery. They do it there too, and yes, the umzes of the three sutra monasteries, Gamden, Drepung, and Sera, the technique they do introductory to the prayers, they master this technique as well.
Okay.
It's just that the great body of the monks in the monastery aren't expected to develop it at all. In the tantric monasteries, they do develop the basic level of it, or it's not even a qualification for being in the monastery. Some monks, they say, just never do develop the technique, and they just sing in singing voice quietly, Mm-hmm. They just do their thing. But it's sort of a basic level of development is considered the way to perform pujas at Gyuto Monastery, and then the umzes, they get the full package of elaborations with tunefulness as well.